Welcome back to the channel, Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're going to make some bases. We're doing a little different this time, so I have a roll of cork board, and we're doing some cork themed bases. We will, of course, add some other rubble, detail, sand, etc. But we're going to be starting with like the cork for the kind of like rubble or like platform style base. So I ordered a large roll of it. You can get it in small sheets, or you can pick up like at the local stores like little bit cork board pieces, etc. If you don't want to buy like a large amount like this. But I need to do quite a few bases, as you can see, and I'm sure this won't be the last time I'm going to need some. Alternatively, if you just had to do like a couple of them, I've used like wine corks, or just any other kind of cork that you have, basically like scrap cork or something like that. But in this case, I think I spent about, I think it was about 10 or 15 bucks for that roll, and obviously that is going to last me forever. So let's get started. I'm gonna go ahead and cut a piece off of that, and just kind of break it up into some decent sized pieces to take up like typically between like 50 and 90% of the base. So all right, so now all we did was basically just broke up a bunch of random pieces of cork. Nothing in particular. There's still going to be like some flat ends and just some random ends. We're not worried about that right now. We're just going to start with this basically, and then you'll see there's parts where obviously like it hangs over the base and everything. We're not worried about that either. We can break off any extra pieces that we don't want on there after we're done. We can shape it with the razor blade, cut it, add gravel, add more pieces, whatever. But all we're doing is just attaching it to the bases. So we just want to use plenty of super glue, and we're just going to apply each piece to the bases. And once again, depending how much coverage exactly you were looking for is up to you. You'll see that I did a lot of them in like one piece, and then a lot of the other ones are like two or three pieces. I think it's important to use like the randomness of it. I typically don't like to use like flat ends, or especially like 90-degree angles on most things, just because it looks too unnatural. It doesn't look random. So you have to be like real careful when you're trying to make something go from like a cork roll where it has like one long flat end, and then you're trying to make it look like just like random rubble or whatever. You may need to upset that flat edge so it doesn't look like as organized. You want to add a little bit of chaos. You might not find that's the case though if whatever you're trying to replicate has like flat edges. But typically with like concrete rubble, which is like kind of what I picture with like the cork, is it's kind of like broken stone or broken concrete. You can have like some straight edges, but overall, if it's going to be broken, it needs to have like the jagged like kind of rubbly look to it. So that's why I just broke it all apart. But like I said, if you were trying to simulate, like an area that isn't broken apart like that, it would be like completely acceptable to have like a flat edge or 90 degree or whatever. You just have to make sure that you incorporate it like correctly. And if you're trying to like disguise what something is, a lot of times like that's where upsetting like the edges or the outlines, changing it in that way can give you like a huge advantage. Like these ones specifically, these pieces are for like the sniper guys for the Space Marine. I can't think of the name. What is it? Suppressors maybe. And so they have like a little base attachment that goes with them. So I just made sure that the actual like cork piece is bigger than the base piece. So it's essentially going to be like a platform for the little piece that I'm adding on. And you could do it the other way around. You could use just those, or add just a little bit of the cork like around it if you didn't want to add like the extra height to the bases. But in this case, you know, this is to match an existing army, so I'm just doing it however like the client wanted. So, and in this case, he wanted them like I call it like a platform style, but essentially it just is like the added elevation. And the main reason not to do that would be because it changes like the game function of the model by giving them just like a tiny bit of height, because it's built into their base, so it changes like where they see or whatever. But if that was ever an issue, you could just keep like a regular guy on a regular base and just like sub him in really quick and make sure like it's not affecting like what he can see or how he could be seen. Or you know, if you felt like somebody was using it like in an advantageous way, like making a model taller so it could see over things to like shoot. But I mean, typically that shouldn't be an issue. I think most people are playing like a friendly game, or like even if something does give like a slight advantage, like maybe you could see over top of something, you can also be seen too, so it's not necessarily like that great of an advantage if you can like shoot stuff easier but then still be shot. Alright, so after we get them all attached to the bases, the next step, we just take like a pair of scissors, and essentially all I do is just go around the sides and just kind of like cut off the spare little bits and kind of like round them off, and essentially like just cut off anything extra that's on there, so it's like all within like the actual bases like perimeter essentially. And then I just add on like a couple little other random bits like here and there, or like in these guys cases where I had like some special little bits to add on, I basically just shaped it around the piece that I wanted above it, and then like added in accordingly to make it look like, you know, make it look like it was meant to be like there. Like with this one, I added in a little extra underneath, so there was like, you know, it looked like there was something for it all to rest on and everything. But the idea is to just add like a little bit of sort of like extra rubble to blend between like the big pieces and the actual base itself. And then that's good right there if you want to call it, but I always like to go just a little bit extra. So in this case, I have just like a sand blend basically. This one's just basic like beach sand. So what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit of that to everything. Now I'm not necessarily going to add any to the tops. Oh, and also I almost forgot to say too, I went ahead and already drilled out the holes for the stands, and the actual stands themselves are magnetized already. So, but essentially all I'm going to do is just kind of go around like the base here and just add a little bit of the kind of like grit from the sand onto here. And it doesn't have to be perfect. The idea is to just add like one more little transition between like the biggest bits, the small bits, and then obviously you have like your actual like sand. And then the base itself has its own like texture already built into it, so you end up with quite a few different textures, especially if you do like random on the larger ones. By the time you get down to just your actual like regular base texture and the sand, you can get like quite a few like steps up and down with the combination of all the different things you're adding on. And then like you can go in afterwards and use texture paint if you don't want to use like the sand and glue method. You could use you could add in like little skulls or little plants, old Space Marine weapons or helmets. I mean, there's lots of different little bits you can add in to essentially just make them a little more detailed. For like a larger base like this, we'll do this one next. You want it to be random, so you're not just gonna like cover everything, but like in general, you'll see like the substrate tends to build up like around the edges. So I'll just like essentially start with like just around the edges where it would initially like collect, and then you can kind of go from there and add in like more or less accordingly. You see how important these trays are. But you see how much extra that just adds for like 2 seconds of work. I'm just basically tracing around. And then you can add a little down in the cracks if you want. You will go through some super glue though. And watch which way you like tilt the base, because all the super glue will like run onto your hand if you let it. Alright, so there we have them all finished up. I went ahead and just put some sand around accordingly. And then, like I said, I drilled out the holes for the flight stands on here. So you could basically just take one of the flight stands and I'll drill like the bottom of the hole smaller. And then I'll drill a larger hole, but not through the base, just through the cork. So it like clips in. And then after it's painted, it like fits in perfectly in there. But in the meantime, we'll just leave those off. But that'll also help it like not break later on, because once they're finished, like the client could choose to like glue that bit on there and then have it be permanent. And then you'll see like these ones here too. And you could call it a wrap right here if you want, or you could add in a couple little skulls. I'm gonna go ahead and add in a couple skulls just because I like the kind of like what is it, like Terminator style, like you know, Armageddon look in the future. So we'll slap a couple skulls on here and call it a wrap. But alright, so I went ahead and cleaned like 30 skulls, clipped them off and everything. So we're just gonna add a couple of random skulls on here. So I basically just like picture how the guy would be standing on here, and then just pick a random place and just add one in, and then just imagine that to be, you know, whenever you're mounting your guy on here, that's going to be the front of the base, so that's like, you know, drawing your attention when you look at it. So, but I'll just kind of go through and add in, and I won't have everyone just like lined up forward either. I'll have them kind of to the sides, but just when you look at the base, so that it's very clear, like directionally how it's going to look. I think that one needs one. Alright, and there we have them all done. Just added a couple of skulls on, just to give it just a little bit more detail. Again, there's nothing like too crazy about them. It's just combination of like simple materials and just adding in layers one after another until you get like that full on like desired look that you want, that 3D feel, and you know, that custom textured look. And then you can go through afterwards and just do like a simple paint job, dry brush, you know, do some like contrast paints, like the skeleton horde on the skulls, nice dark rim on the bases, and you know, maybe add in some little tufts of grass or anything like that if you like. Just whatever you're interested in, whatever you want to do to make them match your table or other existing bases so they fit right in with your army. So but there you have it, guys. Just some more custom bases. These are like the ruin kind of like cork style bases for Warhammer 40,000, but you could easily adjust them a little bit and do something similar to this for like fantasy, for maybe like ruined temple or buildings or something like that as well. So, or just like stonework. Alright, there you have it, guys. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and I'm out of here.